Olivia Langston didn't believe in ghosts, but she saw one at Gate C21. Not the kind that rattled chains or hovered through walls, but the kind that tore open the space between before and after. Her ghost was a man, and walking beside him were two little girls, her daughters. She froze mid-step, the airport's noise dimming to a distant hum. People streamed around her, announcements echoed overhead, and her phone vibrated endlessly in her hand. But none of it mattered. 20 feet away, Elijah Ford stood at the gate counter, leaning down to tie one of the girls' shoes. His dark hair had a streak of silver now. The corners of his mouth, once always ready to smile, were carved deeper, sterner. The smaller girl, Leah, it had to be Leah, was giggling, her curls bouncing wildly as she clung to his arm. The other one, Ava, taller and quieter, was staring at the departure board with the same analytical squint Olivia used when reading a contract. For 6 years, Olivia had imagined them growing up in abstract terms, height charts, birthdays missed, school photos she never dared to ask for. But now here they were, real, whole, laughing, and she was a stranger. Her phone buzzed again. "Ms. Langston," her assistant's voice said through the Bluetooth headset, calm and clipped. "Your Zurich board presentation starts in—" "I'll call you back," Olivia whispered. "Ma'am?" Click. She took a step forward, heart pounding. She wanted to call out, to say his name, to say their names, but her throat locked. The courage that once built her empire failed her completely. Elijah looked up then, as though some invisible thread tugged him toward her. For the first time in 6 years, their eyes met. It hit her like a wave, memories, regrets, the taste of the past. He froze. Recognition flickered across his face. Then something colder, resignation, maybe even anger. He turned slightly, placing a hand on Ava's shoulder. "Come on, girls, let's board." Her breath caught. "Dad?" Leah tugged his sleeve. "Who's that lady?" Elijah didn't answer. He just guided them forward, his jaw tight, his stride unhurried but unyielding. They disappeared past the gate, and Olivia, Billionaire CEO, Forbes cover star, the woman who had negotiated mergers worth billions, stood motionless, undone by 3 people boarding a flight. By the time she reached the window, the plane was already taxiing away. Her reflection stared back, impeccably dressed, polished, powerful. Yet her hands trembled, her pulse thrummed wildly. 6 years. 6 years of silence and cowardice. She had told herself she'd left to protect them, to protect him. The doctors had said she was unstable, that her mind wasn't safe after the twins were born. But it wasn't just illness that drove her away. It was fear. Fear of being seen broken, fear of failing as a mother, fear of watching him pity her. So she'd left without goodbye, and now he was gone again, taking the life she'd once loved with him. Her phone buzzed once more. She almost ignored it until she saw the message notification. A name she hadn't read in years. Elijah Ford. "You saw us." Her breath hitched, fingers shaking, she typed back. "Olivia, I didn't mean to." A long pause. Then 3 dots blinked, disappeared, reappeared. "Elijah, then why didn't you leave?" She stared at the screen. She could tell him the truth, that her feet wouldn't move, that she hadn't known how, that after all these years of running boardrooms and buying silence, she still didn't know how to face him. But instead she typed, "Olivia, because I couldn't." The reply came almost instantly. "Elijah, they don't know who you are." Her throat closed. She typed, then deleted, then typed again. "Olivia, I know, but I'd like to change that." Minutes passed. The screen stayed blank. Then, "Elijah, don't." Her heart cracked open. She wanted to throw the phone, scream, run after the plane. Anything but stand here, rooted in the life she'd built to avoid feeling this. Instead, she closed her eyes, inhaled deeply, and steadied her voice. "Ms. Langston?" Her assistant's voice came again. "Zurich is waiting." Olivia turned away from the window. "Cancel Zurich." There was a pause. "Excuse me?" "Cancel it. Reschedule, postpone, lie, whatever you have to do. I'm not going." "Ma'am, that's not—" She ended the call and walked toward the ticket counter. When's the next flight to Salt Lake City? The attendant blinked. You just missed one, but there's another at 7:45. I'll take it. First class? No. Her voice softened. Coach is fine. The woman looked surprised but nodded. As Olivia took her ticket, she glanced once more at the tarmac, where the plane carrying her past was lifting into the clouds. For years, she'd believed her money, her power, her control were her redemption. But now she realized redemption doesn't come from what you build. It comes from what you go back for. When she boarded her flight that evening, she stared out the window as the city shrank below. For the first time in her life, she didn't have a plan, an agenda, or a script. Just a single thought repeating in her mind. It's time to face what I left behind. She opened her messages again, typed one final text. Olivia, I'm coming to see you, Elijah. Please don't shut me out. This time there was no reply. The plane climbed higher, chasing the last streaks of sunset. And for the first time in 6 years, Olivia Langston didn't feel like she was running away. She felt like she was finally on her way home. Salt Lake City looked nothing like the life Olivia Langston had built for herself. There were no private terminals, no security details, no luxury cars waiting at the curb. Just clean air, snow-dusted mountains, and a kind of silence that unnerved her, the kind that let her thoughts echo too loudly. When the plane touched down, Olivia stepped into the terminal with her carry-on and a heart that hadn't stopped racing since Newark. Her phone buzzed constantly, calls from investors, messages from Zurich, her PR head begging for reassurance that she hadn't gone dark. She turned it off. This wasn't about Aris Aviation or quarterly losses. This was about the one thing she couldn't quantify, negotiate, or buy back. She rented a car, a modest hybrid sedan instead of her usual black SUV, and drove north through the city. The roads wound upward, framed by pines and suburban houses that seemed frozen in time. She could almost see herself 6 years ago, standing on a similar porch, in a similar neighborhood, holding twin babies and trembling under the weight of a love she wasn't ready for. She parked near a park overlooking the valley. For a long while, she just sat there, staring at the world outside. The air smelled of pine and snowmelt. The mountains glowed gold in the late afternoon sun. For the first time since she'd landed, she let herself say his name out loud. Elijah. It came out as a whisper, fragile and reverent. That evening, Olivia sat in her hotel room surrounded by the remains of room service. Untouched pasta, a glass of wine gone warm. Her laptop was open to a file Cameron Reed had sent her before she'd turned her phone off mid-flight. Subject: Elijah Ford, occupation, music teacher, Salt Lake City School District. Health ALS diagnosis confirmed. Stage 2 progression dependence. Ava and Leo Ford, 8 years old. The words blurred. She blinked hard, her vision swimming. ALS. Her hand pressed against her chest, as if she could steady her pulse. She tried to picture him frail, fading, but her memory refused to comply. In her mind, Elijah was still the man who filled every corner of a room with warmth, who hummed while he cooked, who played lullabies for their daughters when they couldn't sleep. She closed the laptop and buried her face in her hands. For years, she'd justified her absence. She told herself she'd left to protect them, from her instability, from the darkness that swallowed her after giving birth. But now, seeing his name next to that diagnosis, all her careful rationalizations cracked. He had spent 6 years raising 2 daughters alone. He had spent 6 years forgiving her in silence. And she had spent 6 years pretending her empire was worth the cost. At 10:13 p.m., her phone buzzed again. A single message lit the screen. Elijah Ford. You shouldn't have come. Her breath caught. She typed back before she could lose the nerve. Olivia. Then why did you text me first? A pause. Then 3 dots appeared, flickered, vanished. Elijah. Habit, I guess. Olivia. I'm not here to disrupt your life. Elijah. You already did that once. The words hit their mark. She stared at the screen, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Olivia. I want to see you, just once, to explain. Another pause. This one longer. She watched the minutes slip by, each one stretching her heart thinner. Then finally, Elijah. Cafe Evergreen, 10 a.m. tomorrow. No address, no signature, just a time and a name, enough to know he hadn't completely closed the door. She typed back, "I'll be there." But he'd already gone offline. Sleep didn't come easily. When it finally did, it brought dreams of the night she left. The twins were only weeks old. She remembered standing by the crib, trembling, staring at them as 1,000 horrible thoughts flickered through her mind. Thoughts she hadn't invited, couldn't control. The doctors called it postpartum psychosis. Elijah had held her when she wept, promised they'd find help together. But the guilt, the terror of what she might do, had eaten her alive. She'd written a letter that night, her hands shaking so violently she could barely hold the pen. "I love you, but I can't be near them until I'm sure I'm safe. Please don't come after me." She'd left it on the pillow and walked out before dawn. Now, 6 years later, she woke up to the same sunrise she'd once fled from. Soft, golden, merciless. At 9:55 the next morning, Olivia parked outside Cafe Evergreen. The small building sat at the edge of Liberty Park, sunlight catching on its wide windows. Inside, people sipped coffee, worked on laptops, laughed. Normal life, something she'd forgotten how to live. Her reflection in the glass was sharp and composed, an armor she no longer trusted. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. He was already there. Elijah sat near the window, a cup of coffee untouched in front of him. His hair was shorter now, flecked with more silver. He wore a navy sweater that made his skin look pale, and when he turned his head, she saw the tremor in his hand. Her breath caught. She hadn't prepared for this, the fragility of him. He looked up and saw her. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then he gestured to the chair across from him. "You're late." "I didn't want to rush this," she said softly. He nodded once, eyes guarded. "You shouldn't have come, Liv." "I know." He leaned back. "Then why did you?" She met his gaze, the truth trembling on her lips. "Because I can't stop seeing what I lost." His expression hardened. "You didn't lose us, Olivia. You left us." The words landed heavy between them. Outside, a child laughed. A doorbell chimed. Life went on. "I was sick," she whispered. "I thought if I stayed—" "I know why," he interrupted, voice low. "I just don't know if I can forgive it." She closed her eyes. "I didn't come for forgiveness. I came for you to know I'm not running anymore." He looked away then, out the window toward the park. His fingers drummed faintly against the table. Slower, unsteady. "Tomorrow," he said finally, "the girls have skating practice at Liberty Rink. If you're really here to stay, show up." Her throat tightened. "I will." He nodded once, stood, and walked away without another word. Olivia watched him go until the bell over the cafe door stopped ringing. For the first time in years, she didn't have a plan, just a promise, and she intended to keep it. The next morning, Olivia arrived at Liberty Rink 15 minutes early. Her hands shook as she tied the skates she'd rented, fingers fumbling with unfamiliar laces. The cold bit at her cheeks, sharp and cleansing, as though the air itself refused to let her hide behind her usual mask. Around her, the rink buzzed with motion. Children laughing, parents sipping coffee from thermoses, blades carving silver lines through the ice. But she wasn't there for them. She was there for two little girls with Elijah's eyes and her stubborn chin. She spotted them almost immediately. Leah was a blur of motion, darting, spinning, occasionally colliding with the boards and laughing like it was part of the fun. Ava skated more carefully, every movement deliberate, graceful in a way that reminded Olivia of Elijah's hands when he used to play piano. Steady, intentional, beautiful. Elijah stood at the rail, leaning slightly on his cane. Even from a distance, she could see how his illness had begun to change him. His posture wasn't as straight, his right hand trembled faintly. Yet his expression, calm, focused, protective, was the same one she remembered from their nights pacing the nursery together. When he saw her, he didn't wave, but he didn't look away either. "Morning," Olivia said softly as she approached. "You came," he replied, his tone neutral. "I said I would." He gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "They don't know who you are yet." "I don't expect them to." For a few moments, they stood side by side, watching the girls skate. Leah spotted them first. She waved enthusiastically, skating over at full speed. "Dad, did you see that? I almost made the turn without falling. I did, he said with a small smile. You're getting better. Leah's attention shifted to Olivia. Her bright eyes blinked curiously. Who's she? Elijah hesitated. This is an old friend. Olivia's throat tightened. Hi, Leah. You're really fast out there. Leah grinned. You skate too? Not very well, Olivia admitted. But I can try. Leah grabbed her hand before she could protest. Then come on. Elijah. He raised an eyebrow. Good luck. Leah practically dragged her onto the ice. The cold surface wobbled under Olivia's unsteady feet, every glide a negotiation with gravity. Leah, meanwhile, shot ahead, spinning like a burst of sunlight. Come on, you're too slow, the girl called, laughing. Olivia tried to follow, but her first step sent her sliding awkwardly. She yelped, flailing before landing hard on the ice. The sound of her fall echoed through the rink. For a moment, there was silence. Then Leah burst out laughing. That was awesome! Olivia couldn't help it. She started laughing too. The absurdity of it, the ice clinging to her coat, the sight of her own reflection in the glass, flushed and human and imperfect. It all cracked something open inside her. Ava skated over, her movements cautious, precise. You're supposed to bend your knees more, she said matter-of-factly. I'll keep that in mind, Olivia said with a smile. Ava tilted her head. You're not from here, are you? No. Your coat looks expensive, Ava observed. Olivia blinked, half amused, half heartbroken. It was a gift. Ava gave a small shrug and turned back toward the ice. Come on, if you're going to fall, at least learn to do it right. Leah nodded seriously. Yeah, Dad says falling is how you get better. The words hit Olivia like a quiet revelation. Falling is how you get better. She got up, wobbling, and followed them as best she could. Leah cheered every time she stayed upright for more than 5 seconds. Ava occasionally corrected her posture with quiet authority, and for an hour Olivia forgot everything else. The company, the guilt, even her fear. She was simply there, falling, laughing, trying. After practice, they gathered by the benches. Leah slurped hot chocolate, her cheeks pink from the cold. Ava sat beside her father, tying her skate laces with meticulous precision. You did good, Leah said between sips. For a beginner. Thank you, Olivia said, smiling. I had a good teacher. Ava glanced up at her. You listened. I tried. Elijah watched them, quiet but thoughtful. You look better here than you did in that cafe. Because I'm not pretending, Olivia said softly. He nodded slowly. They like you. They don't know who I am. That's not the same thing, he murmured. Leah suddenly pointed at Olivia's hands. Your nails are shiny, like Mom's used to be. The words hung in the air. Olivia froze. Elijah looked down, his fingers tightening slightly on his cane. Ava's voice broke the silence. Dad, you okay? Yeah, he said gently. I'm fine. Leah looked confused. Why'd you look sad? He smiled faintly. Just remembering something. Olivia forced a steady breath. I think I'll go for now. Thank you. For letting me be here. Elijah nodded, his voice quieter now. Same time next week, if you mean to keep showing up. She met his gaze. I do. As she turned to leave, Ava's voice called out softly behind her. You should bend your knees more next time. Olivia looked back, a tear slipping down her cheek as she smiled. I'll remember that. Outside the air was cold and bright, the sound of laughter following her to the parking lot. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was running away from the past. She felt like she was skating towards something fragile, real, and still possible. Olivia didn't remember the last time a week had felt so long. Every hour between that morning at the rink and the next Saturday seemed to crawl. An eternity stretched between hope and hesitation. She tried to distract herself with work, with meetings that no longer seemed urgent, with emails that felt hollow, but nothing drowned out the quiet ache of anticipation, the memory of Leah's laughter, Ava's sharp gaze, Elijah's tired smile. When Saturday finally came, she woke before dawn, nerves thrumming like electricity. At the rink, the air was colder than she remembered, sharper, and she realized how much she had missed the sound of skates on ice, the echo of joy. Elijah stood near the boards, hands resting lightly on his cane. He was speaking with another parent, but looked up when she entered. For a fleeting second, a smile touched his face before he quickly hid it behind a sip of coffee. "You came back," he said when she reached him. "I told you I would." He studied her for a moment, then nodded toward the ice. "They're excited. Leah's been talking about teaching you how to spin." Olivia laughed, a nervous sound. "That sounds dangerous." "Don't worry," he said dryly. "She's not very good at it either." "Encouraging as always," she murmured. He smirked, the faintest trace of the man she once knew flashing through. Leah skated over the moment she spotted her. "You're late," she declared. "I'm 10 minutes early," Olivia said. Leah grinned. "Exactly." Ava glided behind her, graceful as ever. "She means you missed warm-up." "Right," Olivia said, pulling on her skates, "because every beginner knows how to do that." Leah grabbed her hand. "Come on, Mom. I mean—" She froze, her cheeks pink. "Sorry." Olivia's breath caught. The word hung between them. Small, fragile, beautiful. "It's okay," she said softly, squeezing Leah's hand. "I liked it." Elijah, watching from the sidelines, said nothing, but his expression shifted. Something flickered behind his eyes that looked a lot like forgiveness. The next hour passed in laughter and slips. Leah made it her mission to teach Olivia how to turn properly, which led to more bruises than progress. Ava, however, was quieter, circling them with the same focus Elijah once had at the piano, observing everything, saying little. When practice ended, Leah dashed off to grab cocoa with her friends. Ava lingered behind, packing her bag methodically. Olivia crouched beside her. "You were incredible out there," Olivia said. Ava shrugged. "Dad says I get it from him." "You do," Olivia agreed, then paused. "But there's a little of me in there too, I think." Ava gave her a sidelong look. "You think so?" "I know so. You move with precision. Every decision careful, thought out. That's me, for better or worse." Ava didn't smile, but her eyes softened. "You fell 6 times. 7, actually," Olivia corrected. "But who's counting?" A faint smile finally broke through. Leah was. She said she stopped after 5 because she felt bad. "Your sister's kind like that." Ava closed her bag and stood. "She misses having a mom." Olivia froze. "And you?" Ava looked up, her expression unreadable. "I miss having all the answers. Dad always said you left because you were sick. I didn't understand what that meant." Olivia's throat tightened. "It means I wasn't okay, and I didn't know how to get better while I was here. I thought leaving would help, but I was wrong." Ava studied her for a long time before nodding once, slow and deliberate. "You should tell Leah that." "I will," Olivia whispered. Later that day, Elijah invited her to stay for lunch, a surprise in itself. They ended up at a small diner nearby, the kind that smelled of bacon and maple syrup. Leah devoured pancakes while Ava dissected her omelet into perfect squares. Olivia watched them, heart swelling with a mix of love and regret so strong it almost hurt. Elijah caught her gaze across the table. "You okay?" She nodded. "Better than I've been in years." He smiled faintly, though his hand trembled slightly as he lifted his mug. The movement didn't escape her. "Do you still play?" she asked quietly. He shook his head. "Not much anymore. The hands don't cooperate." "You could teach," she said. "Even if you can't play, you could still—" He cut her off gently. "I already do." She blinked. "At school?" He nodded. "Middle school orchestra. They're a disaster, but a lovable one." "Of course," she murmured, smiling. "You'd find a way to make that beautiful." His expression softened. "I don't think I ever stopped trying." She looked down at her plate, her voice barely above a whisper. "You shouldn't have had to do it alone." "No," he said, "but I did." The silence between them was heavy, but not cruel. For the first time, it felt like something honest, like they were finally standing on the same ground again. Outside, as they said goodbye, Leah hugged her tightly. "Next week, you're going to learn how to skate backward." Olivia laughed, holding her close. "If I can survive that, I can survive anything." Ava stepped forward, quieter, her voice almost hesitant. "You should come early next time. Dad always forgets Leah's water bottle." Olivia smiled. "I can do that." As they walked toward the car, Elijah lingered beside her. The late afternoon light caught the silver in his hair, And for a moment, he looked both older and exactly the same. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For letting me belong here, even just a little." He met her gaze, something unspoken passing between them. "You always did. You just forgot how to stay." The words sank deep, quiet and true. This time Olivia didn't look away. "Then teach me again," he smiled faintly. "One week at a time." She watched him go, her heart steady for the first time in years. The cold air stung her cheeks, but it felt good, real. She wasn't just visiting her past anymore. She was beginning to live in it again. The call came on a Thursday night. Olivia had just finished reviewing a report in her hotel room when her phone buzzed. She expected it to be Zurich or Cameron checking in on her latest hiatus. But it wasn't. It was Ava. Her voice was small, trembling. "Mom, Dad fell." The word mom made Olivia's heart skip, but the rest sent her into motion before she even realized it. She was already grabbing her coat, her bag, her keys. "Where are you?" "The hospital," Ava said. "They said it's not good." "I'm on my way," Olivia said, already sprinting down the hall. The drive to the hospital blurred by in streaks of rain and city light. Every red light felt personal, every second a lifetime. By the time she reached the emergency entrance, her hands were shaking too hard to hold the steering wheel. Inside, the fluorescent lights hit her like cold water. She found Ava and Leah sitting in the waiting area, curled together on a stiff bench. Leah's eyes were red from crying. Ava's face was pale, emotion locked behind focus, her father's daughter through and through. Olivia crouched in front of them. "Where is he?" "ICU," Ava said. "They're running tests." Olivia took their hands in hers, gripping them tightly. "He's strong, sweetheart." "You know that," Leah sniffled. "He fell in the kitchen. I think he was trying to reach the top shelf again. I told him to wait for me." Olivia's throat burned. "You did the right thing calling for help. I'm proud of you both." Ava's voice cracked. "They said he might not walk without help again." The words hung heavy in the sterile air. Olivia swallowed hard. "We'll face that together, all of us." For the first time, Ava didn't pull away when Olivia reached to hug her. Hours later, when the doctor finally appeared, Olivia stood before him with both daughters at her side. "Elijah sustained a severe fall," the doctor explained. "It's complicated by his condition. His muscles aren't recovering as they used to. He'll need physical therapy and someone with him at all times." "I'll take care of it," Olivia said immediately. The doctor nodded but looked uncertain. "It's going to be demanding. Full-time care, modifications at home." "I said I'll take care of it." Her voice left no room for argument. When they were alone again, Ava looked at her warily. "You mean it? You'll stay?" Olivia met her gaze. "I'm not leaving again." Leah reached for her hand. "Promise?" "I promise." When they were allowed to see him, Elijah looked frail under the hospital lights, his skin too pale, his hands motionless on the blanket. Olivia sat beside him, every breath she took sinking unconsciously to his. "You scared us," she whispered. His lips twitched into a faint smile. "Wouldn't be the first time." She let out a shaky laugh. "You could have warned me before trying acrobatics." "I slipped," he murmured. "Kitchen tile won that round." She reached for his hand. "The doctor says you'll need someone with you full time." He didn't respond right away. Then softly, "You don't have to fix this, Liv." Her voice broke. "I'm not fixing anything. I'm staying." He turned his head toward her, eyes glassy but sharp. "You sure you remember how?" She smiled through her tears. "1 week at a time, remember?" He closed his eyes, his hand weakly curling around hers. "The girls? They're fine, brave, smarter than both of us combined." "That's not hard," he murmured. Her laugh caught in her throat. "You're not allowed to joke about this." He didn't answer, but his breathing steadied. She stayed there until the rhythm of his breaths lulled her into quiet. The following days were a blur of hospital corridors and paperwork. Olivia coordinated with the doctors, arranged therapy, even had contractors assess the house for modifications. Her board flooded her inbox with urgent requests she ignored. When Cameron finally got through on a call, his tone was careful. "You've been off the radar for 12 days, Olivia. Zurich is... Tell them I'm not available." Not available? He hesitated. For how long? For as long as it takes. There was silence on the other end. Then, are you sure? For the first time in a long time, she said, yes. When Elijah was finally discharged, Olivia drove him home. Leah and Ava had decorated the living room with a hand-painted banner that said, "Welcome back, Dad." There were lopsided hearts and a few crooked music notes. He laughed when he saw it. They get that from you. They get their chaos from you, she countered. The girls rushed forward, wrapping him in cautious hugs. Olivia stood back, watching the three of them together, feeling something shift deep inside her. When Leah ran off to fetch the pillows she'd arranged perfectly, Elijah turned to Olivia. You don't have to do all this. I know, she said softly, but I want to. He studied her for a long time. You mean it, don't you? I do. Something in his expression softened. Then I guess we start again. That night, after the girls were asleep, Olivia sat in the living room, staring at the piano by the window. Dust had gathered on the keys. She wiped it clean with her sleeve, then pressed one note. The sound rang out, soft, imperfect, human. Elijah's voice drifted from the hallway. You remember the melody? I never forgot. He smiled faintly from the doorway, leaning on his cane. Then play it. She did. Slowly at first, fumbling through the chords until her fingers remembered where they belonged. The unfinished song filled the house again. His song, the one she left incomplete. When she reached the end, she looked up at him. You never finished it, she said. He nodded. I was waiting. For what? For you to come home. Her heart broke and healed all at once. I'm here now, she whispered, and this time she meant it. Spring settled gently over Salt Lake City. The air carried the scent of thawing earth and lilacs, and each morning the light stretched a little longer across Elijah's house. Their house now. Olivia stood in the kitchen one early Saturday, the smell of pancakes hanging in the air. She was terrible at it. Half the batter splattered across the counter, and one pancake had folded into itself like a defeated letter. Leah didn't care. She sat on the counter, legs swinging, chattering endlessly about her latest skating trick. Ava, ever the observer, sat at the table, sketching quietly in her notebook. Mom, can I pour the syrup myself? Leah asked. Last time you did, we had syrup footprints in the hallway, Olivia said, smiling. That's because Ava bumped me. I did not, Ava said without looking up. Yes, you did. You said, I said watch out, Ava interrupted. And you didn't. Olivia watched the exchange, amused. There was music in their bickering, rhythm, tone, familiarity. It was what she'd missed most all those years, the sound of life that wasn't curated or planned, just alive. She set the plate down on the table and slid into the seat across from them. All right, syrup only at the table this time. Deal? Leah grinned. Deal, Ava smirked. She's going to break that deal in 5 minutes. Leah stuck out her tongue. Olivia laughed, and for a fleeting moment, it felt like peace. Fragile, luminous, and real. Elijah entered the kitchen a few minutes later, leaning heavier on his cane than usual. His smile was tired but still warm. Smells like burnt batter and chaos, he said. Your favorite combination, Olivia replied. He chuckled, moving toward the table. How's my little chef doing? I made the biggest pancake, Leah said proudly, holding up one that was half raw, half crispy. She did, Olivia said. It's avant-garde. Elijah laughed, then winced as he sank into his chair. Olivia's smile faded as she caught the grimace he tried to hide. You should be resting, she said softly. I'm resting now, he replied, pouring coffee with a shaky hand. I'm just not horizontal. Leah slid her plate over to him. You can have mine, Dad. I don't want you to be tired. He touched her cheek, eyes full of quiet tenderness. You're already taking care of me, Leah Bug. That's not your job. Olivia swallowed hard. It's mine, she said, almost under her breath. He looked up at her, and for a moment, the weight of everything unspoken passed between them. The years lost, the time slipping faster now. Later that afternoon, while Elijah rested, Olivia found Ava sitting on the porch, legs crossed, sketchbook open on her knees. She sat beside her, careful not to interrupt. The page was filled with rough pencil drawings, a fox and 2 small cubs walking through snow. That's beautiful, Olivia said quietly. Ava shrugged. It's for the family story day next week. We have to bring something about family. Olivia smiled faintly. The fox and her cubs? Ava nodded. Dad used to tell us a story like this, about a fox who got lost in the snow but followed paw prints home. Olivia's heart squeezed. I remember that one. Ava looked at her, curiosity flickering across her face. He said you came up with it. I did, Olivia said, her voice soft. I made it for you two, when you were babies. He kept telling it after I left. Ava turned the page slowly, revealing another sketch. This one showed the fox reunited with her cubs, standing in a clearing of sunlight. Above them, faintly penciled, was the word home. Olivia blinked against the sudden sting in her eyes. You've made it better than I ever could. Ava studied her for a long moment before saying, You should tell it at school. Olivia blinked. Me? Ava nodded. It's your story. You should tell it this time. Her voice carried no resentment, only quiet conviction. I'd like that, Olivia whispered. Thank you. Ava's lips curved into the smallest smile. You'll do fine. That evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, Olivia helped Elijah to the couch. He resisted her fussing, but she ignored him, adjusting the blanket until it sat just right. You don't have to hover, he said, amused. I'm not hovering, she replied, tucking in one last corner. You're absolutely hovering, she smiled. Maybe I am. He looked at her then, really looked. You're different now. I had to be, she said softly. I wanted to be. He nodded, thoughtful. You know, when you left, I told myself I'd never let you back in. I was so angry, but now, he exhaled, eyes distant. Now I'm just grateful you found your way back before it was too late. Her chest ached. Don't talk like that. It's not about dying, Liv, he said gently. It's about living while there's still time. She reached for his hand. Then we'll live. All of us. He smiled faintly. You always did sound like you were negotiating with the universe. Maybe it's finally listening. The next morning, the house was quiet. Sunlight spilled across the living room floor, catching the edges of the piano keys. Olivia sat down and opened the sheet music Elijah had left there. His handwriting filled the margins, notes, half lyrics, unfinished thoughts. She began to play, the melody soft, hesitant. It was the song he'd started years ago, their song. Her fingers trembled on the keys, but she kept going, filling in the spaces he'd left blank. When the final note faded, she whispered into the silence, I'll finish it for you. From the hallway, Elijah's voice came, weak but clear. You just did. Olivia turned, tears spilling freely now. He was standing there, leaning against his cane, a tired smile on his face. Come sit, she said, rushing to help him. He shook his head. No, just wanted to hear it from where I used to sit. She walked back to the piano bench, and this time, she didn't play. She just listened, to the house breathing, to the warmth of life still here, to the love that had finally learned how to stay. The morning of Family Story Day arrived cloaked in sunlight and nerves. Olivia stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her sweater for the third time. She had faced television cameras, boardrooms, and shareholder meetings without flinching. But this terrified her. It wasn't just a story. It was their story, rewritten, retold, reclaimed. From the kitchen came the sound of laughter and clinking dishes. Leah was humming some improvised tune while Ava corrected her rhythm. Elijah sat nearby, wrapped in a blanket, his cane leaning against the chair. His illness had progressed, his movements slower now, but his eyes still carried that same steady light. You look fine, Elijah called from the other room. Better than fine. You look like someone about to tell the truth. Olivia smiled, her reflection softening. That's exactly what I'm afraid of. He chuckled weakly. The truth doesn't need to be perfect, Liv. It just needs to be real. She crossed the room and kissed his forehead. Then I'll try to make it beautiful too. The school auditorium smelled faintly of crayons and disinfectant. Rows of small chairs faced a makeshift stage decorated with paper cutouts. Hearts, suns, stick figures holding hands. Parents whispered and shuffled, cameras at the ready. Ava and Leah sat near the front, their identical ponytails bouncing as they turned to wave at her. Their eyes, Elijah's eyes, were bright with expectation. The teacher smiled warmly. Next, we have Leah and Ava Ford's mother, Mrs. Langston, with a story about family. Mrs. Langston. The name felt like a coat she'd long since outgrown. Olivia took a slow breath and walked to the center of the stage, her palms damp against the paper she'd folded and unfolded a dozen times. The room quieted. She began softly. Once upon a time, there was a fox who lived in a great forest. A few children gasped in delight. A boy near the back whispered, "A fox!" Olivia smiled faintly. She was clever and brave, but also a little lost. One winter, a storm came, cold and loud and endless. The snow fell so thick she couldn't see her own tracks anymore. She thought she'd never find her way home. Her gaze drifted to the girls in the front row. Leah leaned forward, rapt. Ava sat very still, her pencil poised like she was writing the words in her mind. But one morning, Olivia continued, she found tiny paw prints in the snow. 2 sets. They were small, but they led in the same direction. And so the fox followed them, step by step, until the trees began to thin and the light grew warm again. Her voice wavered. And when she reached the clearing, she found her cubs waiting. They didn't run to her right away. They had to make sure she wouldn't disappear again. So she sat with them quietly in the snow, not saying anything, just waiting, until finally one of them came close enough to rest her head against her side. A hush filled the room. The storm never truly went away, Olivia said softly, but the fox wasn't afraid of it anymore. Because home wasn't something she had to find. It was something she had to stay for. When she finished, the silence lingered for a moment longer before the applause began, gentle, uncertain at first, then growing into something warm and steady. Leah clapped so hard her hands turned pink. Ava didn't clap right away. She just looked at her mother, eyes glistening, then finally smiled. Olivia's breath caught. For the first time, she felt something settle inside her, a quiet sense of belonging she hadn't felt in years. Later in the hallway, parents and teachers offered polite smiles and compliments. Olivia barely heard them. She only saw her daughters running toward her. "That was the best story ever," Leah exclaimed, throwing her arms around her waist. Ava stood beside them, more reserved but no less moved. "You didn't say the fox was you," she said. Olivia smiled. "Didn't have to." Ava nodded. "I know." Elijah waited near the exit, sitting in his wheelchair for the first time in public. His hands were trembling, but his expression was calm, proud. When they reached him, he said quietly, "You told it perfectly." "I almost didn't make it through," she admitted. "You did," he said, "and you made it beautiful." The girls ran ahead toward the car, their laughter echoing down the hall. Olivia stayed behind with him, her hand resting on his shoulder. "Thank you for making me do this." "I didn't make you," he said. "You were already ready." That evening, the family sat together on the porch. The sun dipped low behind the mountains, painting the sky in gold and violet. Leah sprawled across the steps, coloring in a drawing of the Fox family from the story. Ava was sketching again. This time, Olivia noticed, all 4 of them were there. Elijah dozed lightly beside her, his breathing shallow but steady. Olivia took his hand and traced the faint scars along his fingers, once nimble enough to create entire worlds of music. "You know," he said quietly, eyes still closed, "you found your song again." She looked at him. "Our song?" He smiled. "You're the one still playing." Tears welled in her eyes. "I'll never stop." "I know," he whispered, his voice breaking with both pride and pain. "That's how I know you're home." When the girls went to bed, Olivia returned to the piano. The house was dark except for the soft glow of a single lamp. She opened the sheet music Elijah had written years ago, the unfinished song that had once been too painful to look at. Now she played it from beginning to end. The melody had changed. It was slower now, deeper, full of everything they'd lived through. And when she reached the last blank line, she didn't hesitate. She added the final notes, simple, quiet, certain. Behind her, she heard Elijah's faint voice. "Perfect." She turned, but he was already asleep in his chair, his head tilted toward the light. Olivia closed the piano, her heart full and fragile all at once. The house was silent except for the soft ticking of the clock and the steady breathing of the people she loved. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of what came next, because home wasn't something she was still trying to reach. It was the place she had finally learned to stay. The days after Family Story Day felt suspended in a fragile sort of calm. Spring was fully awake now. The snow had melted, the air smelled faintly of pine and earth, and sunlight stretched through the living room windows like an unspoken promise. Yet Olivia could feel change humming beneath the surface, a quiet awareness that peace rarely lasted forever. Elijah was weaker. She noticed it in the smallest things, the way his hand trembled more when he reached for his mug, how his sentences came slower, as though each word had to fight its way out. But he still smiled. He still insisted on sitting by the piano when she played, claiming he could hear better from that angle. Every evening she played for him, the same melody, the same quiet prayer disguised as music. One night, as the girls worked on their homework, Elijah called her over. "Liv," he said softly, "come sit." She crossed the room and sat beside him on the couch. His hand found hers. "I've been thinking," he said, "about the song." "The one we finished?" she asked. He nodded faintly. "It's not just ours anymore. It's theirs too." He gestured toward the girls at the table. "Ava's precision, Leah's chaos. It's all in there somewhere. I want them to have it." Olivia smiled. "They already do." "No," he said quietly. "I mean for real. I want you to record it with them." She blinked. "Record it?" "Yeah." His lips curved weakly. "One last time before my hands give up completely." Her chest tightened. "Eli, don't—" "I'm not giving up," he interrupted gently. "I just want to leave something behind that sounds like us." Olivia's throat burned. "Then we will." They recorded it the next week. A friend from Elijah's old music program offered a studio, and for an afternoon, the four of them created something that felt eternal. Leah on violin, slightly off-tempo but full of heart. Ava at the piano, measured, steady, precise. Elijah guiding softly from his chair, his voice breaking between instructions. And Olivia, singing the words she had written for the unfinished song. "You waited in silence. I built my sky in fear. You lit the windows. I disappeared. But love, it stayed right here." The recording light blinked red. The air was heavy with meaning. When the final note faded, Elijah closed his eyes, exhaling a sound somewhere between relief and release. "That's it," he whispered. "That's the one." Leah threw her arms around him. "We sounded amazing." "You did," he said, his voice breaking. "You really did." Ava, quieter but no less moved, added, "It's perfect." Olivia smiled through tears. "It's us." That night, Elijah couldn't sleep. She found him sitting by the window, wrapped in a blanket, staring out into the starlit sky. "Couldn't rest?" she asked. He shook his head. "Didn't want to." She sat beside him. "You should be saving your strength." "For what?" He smiled faintly. "You can't store time, Liv. You can only spend it right." The words pierced her. "Then we'll spend it together." They sat in silence for a long while, the world outside reduced to the hum of crickets and the distant sound of wind through trees. "I used to think," Elijah said softly, "that the worst thing you ever did was leave." Olivia stared at him, her breath caught. He continued, voice gentle. "But it wasn't. The worst thing would have been if you never came back." Tears blurred her vision. "I should have come sooner." "Maybe," he said, "but you came when it mattered." He reached for her hand again. "Promise me something." "Anything. When I can't say the words anymore. When the music stops, don't let them forget the sound of home." She pressed his hand to her lips. "They never will." He smiled, the faintest trace of mischief glinting in his tired eyes. "You sure about that?" "Leah thinks home is wherever there's syrup." Olivia laughed through her tears. "Then she's not wrong." He chuckled, a soft, weary sound. "Yeah, I guess she's not." The next morning, Elijah slept late. The girls tiptoed around the house, whispering. Olivia cooked quietly, afraid to wake him too soon. By afternoon, the nurse stopped by. Olivia waited in the hall, wringing her hands as the nurse checked his vitals. After a few moments, the woman emerged, her expression composed but careful. He's resting deeply, she said. You should stay close today. Something inside Olivia sank. Is it time? The nurse hesitated, then nodded slightly. He'll want to see you. When Olivia entered the room, Elijah's eyes were open but distant. He smiled faintly. Hey. She sat beside him, her heart pounding. Hey. You played the song this morning? He asked. I did. Good. Keep playing it. I will. He looked past her, toward the doorway where their daughters lingered. Girl, he called softly. Come here. They came running, Ava on one side, Leah on the other. He rested a trembling hand on each of their heads. You two, he whispered, are my masterpiece. Leah sniffled. Dad, don't say that. Ava's chin trembled. You're going to be okay. He smiled faintly. I already am. Then he looked at Olivia. You'll keep them safe? With my life. Promise? She nodded, tears falling freely. I promise. He exhaled slowly, a long, peaceful breath that seemed to carry everything he'd ever left unsaid. The room fell quiet. Outside, wind rustled through the trees, gentle, rhythmic, almost like music. Olivia leaned forward, pressing her forehead to his. Rest, love, she whispered. We'll carry the song. And for the first time since she'd met him, Elijah didn't answer. That night, when the girls were asleep, Olivia sat alone at the piano. Her hands trembled as she played their song, each note heavy with memory, every chord a heartbeat. When she finished, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt full, of echoes, of promises, of him. She wiped her tears, whispering into the darkness. The song doesn't end, Elijah. It just changes who plays it. The weeks after Elijah's passing unfolded like a blur of sound and silence. The house was too quiet now. Every room still held his scent, cedar, coffee, and faint traces of sheet music, and every surface seemed to hum with unfinished moments. Olivia found herself listening for the small noises that no longer came. His cough, the shuffle of his cane, the faint hum of a tune he'd start composing mid-conversation. The girls handled it differently. Leah filled the silence with questions. Ava filled it with stillness. Do you think he can hear us? Leah asked one night, curled beside Olivia on the couch. Olivia brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. I think he hears every note we play. Leah's lips trembled. Then we have to keep playing, right? Yes, Olivia whispered. Always. Ava, sitting on the floor with her sketchbook, didn't look up. He said music doesn't stop. It just changes who plays it. Olivia's breath caught. He did say that. It was hard to tell who was comforting whom anymore. The memorial was small, just family, neighbors, a few former students. Elijah hadn't wanted a grand farewell. No sad strings, he'd written in his will, just stories and something good to eat. So that's what they gave him. In the backyard, sunlight poured across the grass where the girls once played tag. People shared stories, how he'd taught them to love music, to listen, to find beauty in the unfinished. Olivia stood by the piano they'd moved outside for the occasion. Her fingers hovered over the keys as the crowd quieted. This was Elijah's song, she said softly, but it belongs to all of us now. She began to play. The melody floated through the air, fragile yet unbroken. Ava joined her, taking the higher notes. Leah hummed along under her breath. When the last chord faded, no one clapped. They just sat with it, with the sound of love refusing to leave. Afterward, when everyone else had gone, Olivia stayed behind. The sun was setting, and the shadows stretched long across the yard. You got your wish, she whispered to the air. No sad strings, just us. The wind moved gently through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, a bird began to sing. In the weeks that followed, Olivia began rebuilding the rhythm of their lives. Mornings became lighter. The girls returned to school. She started cooking again. Real meals, not the rushed things she used to order from hotel kitchens. The first few times she tried to laugh, it caught in her throat. But slowly laughter returned, cautious but sincere. She spent her evenings writing, not contracts or reports, but pages and pages of letters, to Elijah, to herself, to the version of her she used to be. Dear Eli, she wrote one night, you told me once that strength wasn't about control. It was about staying soft when the world turns hard. I understand that now. You softened me in all the right ways. She folded the letter carefully and placed it in a box beneath the piano, the same box that held his old sheet music and the girls' first drawings. It was Leah who suggested the recital. Dad would want it, she said one morning at breakfast. He said music only lives if we share it. Ava frowned. You just don't want to practice alone. Leah grinned. Nope, I want you to play too. And Mom, we can call it Home Again, like the song. Olivia froze mid-sip of coffee. Home Again? Yeah, Leah said. The song you and Dad wrote. Ava set down her spoon. It's a good name. Olivia's eyes stung. It is. So they practiced. Every evening after dinner, the three of them gathered around the piano. Leah's bow screeched and Ava rolled her eyes. Olivia missed notes and laughed when she did. But gradually, the song came together. The melody felt different now, slower, deeper, but full of warmth. On the night of the recital, the small community center was packed. Families, teachers, Elijah's former students, all had come to hear the family he'd loved so fiercely. Ava sat at the piano. Leah stood with her violin. Olivia stood behind them both, her hands trembling, not from fear, but from the weight of what this moment meant. When the first note sounded, something inside her loosened. The music filled the room, familiar yet transformed, echoing through hearts and memory alike. As the final chord lingered, Olivia looked up, her gaze catching on the empty seat in the front row, the one she'd left for him. She smiled through her tears. He heard that, she whispered. Leah squeezed her hand. I know. Ava nodded. We did it. You did, Olivia said softly. We all did. That night after the girls fell asleep, Olivia sat on the porch, wrapped in one of Elijah's old sweaters. The stars shimmered above, vast and endless. She thought of how far she'd come, from the woman who had run from her pain to the one who now sat quietly inside it, unafraid. The wind stirred, carrying the faint scent of lilac and cedar. You'd be proud of them, she murmured. Of us. Somewhere in the darkness, a faint sound rose. A few soft notes, like a piano chord carried on the breeze. Olivia closed her eyes. For a moment, she could almost feel him beside her, humming under his breath, just like he used to. She smiled, tears slipping down her cheeks. I'll keep playing, Eli. I promise. Then she looked up at the stars, their quiet light steady against the dark. And for the first time since his passing, she didn't feel like something was missing. She felt like something was continuing. Summer arrived with a quiet, golden grace. The house was different now, warmer somehow, though fewer footsteps echoed in its halls. The piano had become the heart of it. Sheet music covered the coffee table, half-finished drawings hung on the refrigerator, and every morning sunlight poured through the window like a benediction. Olivia stood at the kitchen counter, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee gone cold. Outside, the girls were playing in the yard, chasing one another through the tall grass. Leah's laughter rang out first, bright and unrestrained. Ava followed, slower, more deliberate, but smiling all the same. They were growing so quickly. There were moments quiet and sudden when Olivia would look at them and realize how much of Elijah lived in each of them. Not just in their eyes or their voices, but in the way they carried the world. Sometimes she caught herself talking to him as if he were still there. You'd love this part, she'd whisper when Leah hit the right note on her violin. Or, she's finally playing with both hands, when Ava practiced the melody they'd written together. The ache of missing him hadn't vanished. It had simply changed shape. No longer sharp and unbearable, but soft, woven into the rhythm of everyday life. One evening, the girls found her sorting through the box of Elijah's things. Old notebooks, programs from his concerts, the worn metronome he'd sworn he couldn't compose without. What's that? Leah asked, pointing to a thick folder labeled Home Again, Original Draft. Olivia smiled. It's the first version of the song your dad wrote. Ava leaned closer. Can we see it? Of course, Olivia said, opening it carefully. Inside were handwritten notes, corrections, smudges from erased lines. And on the last page, a simple phrase written in Elijah's looping script. For Liv and the girls. Finish it when I can't. Leah traced the words with her fingers. He really meant it. Olivia nodded. He did. Ava glanced up. You already finished it, though. We recorded it. Olivia hesitated, then shook her head. Not completely. I think he wanted it to keep growing, to change with us. Leah's eyes brightened. So we should add to it. Ava looked skeptical. Add what? Leah grinned. Words. Or maybe a new part. Something happy. Olivia laughed softly. Something happy sounds perfect. That night, they sat around the piano with candles flickering on the mantel. Leah hummed new notes between sips of cocoa while Ava scribbled ideas in her notebook. Olivia listened, letting the sound wash over her. The imperfect, beautiful chaos of creation. The song evolved. New chords, new harmonies. The melody that had once belonged to Elijah now belonged to all of them. When they finished, Leah leaned against her mother's shoulder. Do you think Dad can hear it? Olivia smiled through the tears gathering in her eyes. I don't think he ever stopped listening. Weeks later, the three of them stood under a wide summer sky at the outdoor amphitheater in Zilker Park. It was the same place where Elijah used to teach his students during music workshops. And now the local school district was hosting a charity concert in his honor. They'd named it The Song We Never Finished. As people gathered, Olivia felt a quiet hum of nerves rise in her chest. She looked at the girls, Leah tightening her bowstring, Ava adjusting the piano bench. Both calm, both ready. When the lights dimmed, the announcer spoke. Tonight's final performance is by the Ford family, continuing the legacy of the man who reminded us that love, like music, never ends. Olivia exhaled slowly and took her place beside them. The first notes drifted into the night air, soft, deliberate, full of memory. Ava's piano echoed with gentle strength. Leah's violin soared with youthful wonder. And then Olivia began to sing, her voice trembling at first but growing steadier with every word. You waited in silence. I built my sky in fear. You lit the windows. I disappeared. But love, it stayed right here. The second verse was new, written by the girls. We followed your footsteps through echoes and rain. Your song never faded. It whispered our names. The crowd listened in stillness. Even the night itself seemed to pause. When the final chord rang out, Olivia lifted her gaze to the stars. She could almost see him there, standing just beyond the light, smiling that quiet, patient smile. For a moment, the grief didn't hurt. It glowed. After the show, as people mingled and shared stories, the girls ran ahead, still buzzing with adrenaline. Olivia lingered near the edge of the stage, watching the lanterns float above the crowd. Cameron found her there, holding 2 cups of cider. He would have loved this, he said, offering one to her. Olivia nodded. He did, every part of it. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching Ava teach Leah how to bow properly. Cameron smiled faintly. You know, you could go back to the company any time. Zurich's still asking. Olivia shook her head. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Then what now? She looked out at the stage where her daughters were laughing under the lights. Now I stay. Later that night, when the house was quiet again, Olivia sat at the piano one last time. The air still smelled faintly of summer rain. She opened Elijah's old notebook and added a single line beneath his final words. And we did. Her fingers found the keys almost instinctively. The first notes of Home Again filled the dark room. Soft, unhurried, alive. She didn't cry this time. She just played, feeling each chord settle into the space around her like a heartbeat. When the final note faded, she closed the lid gently and whispered into the quiet. We finished it, Elijah, and it's still playing. Outside, the night answered with the low hum of cicadas, the steady rhythm of life moving forward. And inside, the music lingered, warm, unending, and home.